standing right here, and you're right, like, they can walk right down through there. Yeah. Looks like right there. Yeah, you can hold it over the wall.
Tell you what, I looked across the street, if anybody doesn't like their job, they ought to look at those guys putting up that roof in that building. What is they like
That's
today?
my changed occupation for you.
Oh. I couldn't do it.
Huh? What's up, brother? How are you? What's going on? Man, yeah. How you been?
Walk back in the building, they say, sorry, you need to be in Benton in 40 minutes.
I was at your place the other day. I'll be there on the 19th.
Oh, yeah?
Something about the bag, brews, and barbecue event we got going on.
Going on the vine?
Yeah.
The only thing be worse now is insulating the attic. Which at least you've been.
Yeah.
I just pulled it up.
Pretty cool. Everybody's like, I know, purple. It says we're right. Everything's purple.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he did. I was rushing. He works for Mark Mill, Soccer here in town. And, he has pressure on his yeah. I did not.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trevor Lyons. I serve as the Communications Director here for Saline County Government. Here in just a moment, Saline County Judge Matt Brumley is going to come up and read a statement. After he does the statement, he will have a period for questions from the press. So we ask that you hold your questions until then. Judge Brumley.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you to those who have showed up today for what I consider some very important issues. My name is Matt Brumley, and I'm the Saline County Judge, and I've served in that capacity for 5 months and I think 26 days. Over that amount of time, I haven't regretted one day of it, and I am extremely grateful to those in Saline County who trusted me enough to allow me to serve in this position. I moved here many, many years ago, and when I ran for Saline County Judge and made that decision, I'll be honest with you, the Saline County Library was not something that came up very often on the campaign trail. However, over the last 3.5 months, it has been at the top of topics that have been discussed, I believe, around our community, in the courthouse, in my office, in committee meetings, in quorum court meetings. There have been a lot of messages. There have been quotes that are inaccurate that have been put out. There have been positions that people have said others hold. While some of those may be accurate, I can say for sure not all of those are accurate. We'll run through just a couple of events. In 1977, there was a vote, and that vote was to have one bill passed for the Saline County Library to come into existence. And the first ordinance, I'm assuming, titled 1978-1 ordinance, was the Saline County Library ordinance and setting forth an administrative board. In 1998, there was a quarter-cent sales tax. It was a 2-year quarter-cent sales tax to construct 2 buildings, one in Bryant and one in Benton, and these are part of the Saline County Library system. It was for capital expenditures that were specific for the Saline County Library and to start that system. There was also a special election for that 1 mill to increase to .0017 mils. Today, that brings in about $3.6 million, that .0017 mils. In March, there was a committee meeting, which I was not in attendance. I actually left early and went to an event that was being held here in Saline County. But it came to my attention that a resident brought forth books, reportedly from the Saline County Library, or books like those that were in the Saline County Library, to make it known that they believed that there were materials that were inappropriate for the age in which the books were placed. I want to be clear, I'm paraphrasing what the spirit and what was said in a meeting I was not in attendance. I was made aware of this as this was the first Monday of the month. And that week I asked to meet with the director of the Saline County Library, Ms. Patty Hester, in my office, and to get her insight on what I had heard. We had a good discussion. We disagreed on what I consider some fundamental things as they pertain to the placement of books with certain content in the Saline County Library, but at that point in time, I had not done much of my homework. I was aware of a Senate bill, Senate Bill 81, that was being heard in committee, I believe was being heard that week in committee. And I remember making a comment that we need to address this sooner than later, that this issue was coming, and let's be proactive, that regardless of legislation, regardless of law and ordinances, that we're better than that. We need to do the next right thing. And while I'll just stop with that. That Senate Bill 81 later became Act 372, once being amended and passing both the House and the Senate. And still, the anticipated date is August 1st, while there's much debate whether it will become law on August 1st or not. I'm still going to say that that's the date that we anticipate, unless unless told otherwise, that it will become law. On April 17th, there was a resolution that was sponsored by Jay Keys of the Saline County Quorum Court. And I want to read a portion of that resolution. The library should be proactive and take steps to ensure that materials that are not subject matter or age appropriate, such as those that contain sexually explicit content or imagery, are not located in areas where children's materials are located. The library should enact policies to relocate materials that are not subject matter or age appropriate for children due to their sexual content or imagery to an area that is accessible for children. To an area that is accessible to children. That passed the Quorum Court on the 17th day of April this year. Led to multiple statements, questions in the media. What does this mean? A resolution really has no lawful weight to it. Let me restate it. The resolution literally has no lawful weight to it. It's a clear statement of the spirit of the Saline County Quorum Court. And our request, quote, request, that you take it into consideration and do what it says. I was notified that it was not the intent of the Saline County Library to do anything different in light of this resolution. There then became multiple statements to the media, statements that I think categorized the feelings of those that sat on the Quorum Court, those that had affiliation with certain groups of people throughout the county, reports of motivations to marginalize people groups, including those that have sexual preferences that may be different from yours or mine, or whose color of skin may be different than yours or mine. Now, while I cannot speak for everybody, the close to 30,000 people in Saline County, I want to go back and tell you this. I serve on a quorum court that is comprised of 13 justices of the peace. And I will say with full confidence that there has been nothing to lead me to believe that any of those things that I just said, as far as marginalizing people, fit in to any desires that were put forth for that resolution. Rather, I'll say that the motivation is to ensure that the most vulnerable of our county and community are well protected by people who care so much that they, regardless of if a law has come to fruition yet, that we do the next right thing for the future of our county, which is the youth within our county. We're a county of almost 100,000 people. We're a county of 6 cities. We're a county of 4 school districts. We're a county with innovators, with industry leaders. We're a county with state champions, with academic leaders nationally and statewide. We're a county with multi-generational families and families that said, let's give Saline County a chance and build generations within that county. We're a county with rich history, and I believe a much richer future in store for us. We have a career technical education center in this county that leads the state, our region, and the country on what we should be doing and investing in the youth of our people in this county. For educated workforce, for people that know we care that much about them. We're a place you can go for recreation. We're a place you can go for rest. We're a place you can call home, where you can live, work, and play, where you can find the best in health care and the best for the safety of your family, the safety of your family. I chose a place, while 130,000 strong, I can still know my neighbors. I can still know my leaders. I can walk inside a mayor's office as a citizen of this county. I hope other people have chosen a place for that very reason. I've chosen a place where I can know people that think differently than me. But because they think differently doesn't mean they're against me or I am against them. But it allows for good, healthy conversation. I want to be a community that demands truth, but's rich with compassion and grace. Whew. I'm glad that this community is filled with people that were compassionate towards me, graceful towards me. And I'll continue to need that compassion and grace. I want to thank you to those who have shown true, genuine concern and questions as to the direction that we are going as a community. How can you be for great education and not for a library? It's a very good question. Thank you for allowing me to tell you we are for Saline County Library. We are for the patrons of the Saline County Library. And we are for people who want to serve well and responsibly within the Saline County Library system. On June 19th, after a whole lot of research, a look at best practices, a look at the practices of other library systems, a look at the Constitution of the great state of Arkansas, there was an ordinance that was read for the first time. This ordinance, with these amendments, was read for the first time on June 19th. This is amending the ordinance 78-1 and giving the county judge oversight within that ordinance. That ordinance is scheduled to be read again on the third Monday of July. Since March, there have been close to 100 public comments made at public meetings at the Saline County Courthouse. The vast majority of those comments were made in reference to the situation we find ourselves in with the Saline County Library currently. I want to be clear with a couple of things. Never has it been an initiative a desire or a motivation of anybody within Saline County government to ban books. To this date, never has it been the motivation, the desire, or has there been an initiative to defund the Saline County library system. With that being said, Constitution Amendment 55 gives the county judge the authority to hire and fire those county employees that do not fall under an elected official. Ordinance 78-1 can be argued put that in question. Can be argued that it put that in question. It is our desire to be explicitly clear that not only is that a concern, but there are other things in 78-1, a 45-year-old ordinance, that we felt needed attention. I believe as an elected official, if something is brought to our attention and a concern, and it is looked into and investigated, it deserves our attention. If something is found to be valid, it must be addressed. These select books within a large inventory of the Saline County Library have been brought forward to us. Let me be a little more clear. Selected books within the large number of books in the Saline County Library have been brought to us with concern of where they were stored within the library, specifically within the youth section or the children's section. I believe some of those books are very valid to have concern over. I also believe, as I said earlier, in efforts to protect the most vulnerable and do the right thing, we must address these collaboratively with the Saline County Library and come up with where these books should be placed within the library appropriately. I look forward to that happening along with the Saline County Library Board. I feel confident that that will take place. Saline County Library Board, on June 19th, I appointed a new library director by the name of Jamie Clemmer, and that was confirmed by the Saline County Quorum Court. I was told Friday afternoon that there has been a resignation from the Saline County Library Board, and there will be another member of the Saline County Library Board appointed shortly. Board members are appointed by the county judge and confirmed by the Quorum Court. I have seen evidence in this community of something that is foreign to me. I've seen a divisive nature that is foreign to me. I have found people that I believe are so interested in making points that we sometimes forget the difference that we can make and positive impacts that we can make. This county has so many great people and so many great things and so many great talents. I want to encourage those that are choosing to communicate about people that they may have never even met before. to hold, to have confidence in a system that may not work as exponentially as we can't expedite things to the satisfaction of everybody within the county, but I promise you, there are people that are making sure that we are going to get where we need to be. And that is to have the very best library in the very best county in the state of Arkansas. I've kept silent from the press. I want to at least thank you for your outward appearance of being patient with me. I've done this for a couple of reasons. The amount of information that is being talked about within this community is a little bit difficult to keep up with. I've encouraged people to email me, and if they have questions or concerns, please make an appointment and come in and talk to me, and many have done that, and I appreciate that. I have fielded many questions from many different angles. Hypotheticals, if this happens, then what do you think about it? So I called a press conference so I can disseminate information to you in hopes that it's just as accurate as I can get it. My hope is this. Not because I stood up here and told people to take a deep breath, to hold on, don't let haste mess up success. Be clear again. We must demand truth. We must demand safety for those that we care about. But we also need to have good, healthy conversation and engage in processes that currently exist to see what the outcomes may be. And if they fall short, then we must grieve. We must challenge those again. My hope is that what we are doing, that we take a good look at and say, is it helpful and is it necessary? And if the answer is yes, then we do it. This hit me today, and then I'll open it up for some questions. I will for sure, but I'm guilty sometimes in saying this is it, and it's not. My motivation is to serve. I walk alongside many in this county that's their motivation too. There are people that are hurt and disappointed. And when you're hurt and disappointed, I get it. You can react in a way that in the moment may not be the healthiest way at that point in time. In efforts to serve, we once had this idea we're going to open up our house to foster kids. I don't know if anybody's done that, but you go through a pretty rigorous inspection. DHS comes in your house and they look around, and this is after we put things where we thought were safe places if children were going to be in our home. And they came back with this report that was pretty long on things we needed to change in order to make our homes safe enough for the kids that we hadn't even met yet to come into our house and be able to call it a safe environment. Because those findings were there, it didn't mean that we didn't care for kids. We needed to act. We needed to ask questions. We needed to make sure that we were doing things the right way and continue to do those things the right way. To make sure the safeguards were in place. The appropriate people would continue to come in and give us surveys and make sure that we were doing what was expected. There's been an inspection of sorts at the Saline County Library. I have participated, and that's the one I'm speaking of, in which I believe things are placed in a place that are not appropriate nor safe for young people. That they have explicit sexual content that should not be observed, looked at, or read by minor young eyes. I've made my list, turned my list in. I'm looking for the responsible response and conversation so that we can have success and call the Saline County Library not only a great place, but one in which people will listen, they will look, and they will act. We close with this. Does that mean that every book that's been mentioned you feel needs to be moved? The answer is no. I have not looked at every book, and I have seen books that I would need conversation to better understand why it is not stored in the appropriate place today. And I respect others enough to sit down with them and explicitly explain why I believe the books that I do think need to be moved and not banned, need to be moved to a different location. I'm going to open it up to a couple of minutes of questions. If anybody has questions, please let me know. Yes, sir.
Thank you for doing the press conference. Thanks for having this episode with the Courier. In your view, as the decision could come down to you, Act 372, eventually becomes law pending lawsuits, how would you define a book as sexually explicit or obscene? In your eyes, what makes a book obscene or sexually explicit?
Thank you for the question. First off, it draws me back to something. That resolution, I'll get to that, Destin, for sure. The resolution that was passed initially was knowing what law was coming forward. In that law, if the person that asked for reconsideration doesn't get the answer that satisfies them, they can then go to the next level, which includes the county judge in the quorum court. We asked for the proactive stance so that we wouldn't be in the situation a similar situation that we find ourselves in today. That we would not be reading books, that we would be doing other county business. The question was, what do you define?
In your eyes, what would make a book obscene, sexually explicit, or just simply not fit for the children's section?
I can show you one of them. It's called All Boys Aren't Blue. I filled out, I don't think that actually it is open to freedom of information. I'm actually not sure. But I'd be willing to share my feelings about that book with a grown adult. Believe that when somebody asks you, what would you describe as an automobile, there can be a whole lot of answers to that. But when I see one, I know that's an automobile. When somebody asks me about explicitly sexual content, I've been shown some that I would not consider explicitly sexual content. That there was subject matter that might lead one to believe what somebody's sexual preference may be, but there was an explicit graphic detail that goes into the actions, the sensations of, in great detail. think the answer to my question could go and go and go, depending on preference and all of those other things. I want to be clear here. This isn't a issue of sexual preference. This is sexual detail, graphically described and explicit in the content, regardless of the subject matter.
Can you give any more information on the new library director, how that process will go? I assume y'all still have to read the minute 2 more times before you have the power to do that. Can you kind of just explain this process?
Make sure I understood your question. Did you ask about the new library
That you
director?
appointed, yes, that you mentioned.
Okay, that was a new board member,
A board
trustee.
member, okay.
Let me get the vernacular correct. That was a library trustee,
Okay.
not library
Okay.
director. Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions. Test verbally on this advocate. First, can you tell us which library board member resigned last week?
I haven't received that resignation yet. I was made aware that we had a resignation Friday. I will be attending a specially called library meeting. Have you all been made aware of that? At 3:30 today. I would expect that resignation would be discussed, and I would see the letter that was tendered.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that special meeting. Now I am. Thank you for that. Second question is kind of into that offer question. Some of the folks that have been challenged or it's been said that they should be removed from the reach of children don't have any explicit details like you said. So I was wondering, some of them are directly aimed at children, and because of that, they don't have such details. Do you think that those should be, removed from where kids can access them? Or because they don't have details, should they perhaps be allowed to see what they are?
I believe that those books that have explicitly sexual detail and imagery should be looked at and moved to a different section. I don't know the books you're talking about. My understanding as of 4 o'clock Friday, there had been 2 books put up for reconsideration in the Saline County Library. I'm aware of what one of those is. I can't speak to what the other one is. Justin?
I was just going to ask, is the county relying on anyone outside of the county government for legal advice? If so, who?
Yes.
Who?
Currently, the AAC.
Okay.
Yes.
Judge, does the Saline County Library keep books that say the Garland County Library, the Pulaski County Library, or any other library in the state?
I believe, and again, that would be a question that's probably better suited for library staff, but I do believe that there is a program in which they can borrow from a different library if they do not have the book that's in place.
So we're not questioning whether we should have these books, we're just where the books should be placed.
That is correct.
And who determines where the books are placed in each particular library?
Again, that's a operations question. If there's day-to-day movement, they've got shelvers. Do they come in? Are they reviewed? I have received conflicting reports on ultimately, but by ordinance, the Saline County Library Board is going to be the one with ultimate oversight over the Saline County Library and the library director. Yes, sir.
What thought have you put into what steps the forum court might take once, assuming this ordinance is passed, regarding the library board, specifically the library system at large?
The quorum court is the legislative arm of county government. Who are you with?
I'm with the Democratic side. I'm sorry, my name is Josh Snyder.
Okay, Josh. They're going to be they are the legislative arm, sets ordinance, and then I execute those laws and ordinances. So, you know, again, now we're getting into some hypotheticals as far as the quorum court and what they're gonna be involved in daily operations. I don't see them involved in daily operations. They confirm the board members, the trustees, I keep saying board members, the library trustees. So they are involved there. They also appropriate the dollars for the budget to the library. Outside of that, I don't see any operational duties for the quorum court within the Saline County Library.
And if I may, try to look like
Okay, Shelley's hand's been up for a minute, so after you get done with yours, Josh, we correct Shelley's.
Okay, sure. And I guess the second question I had was, you know, there have been reports, I know at the committee meeting a few weeks ago, there was a lot of discussion about toning down the temperature of the conversation. You know, there have been reports of Saline County library staff being harassed or their phone numbers or addresses and personal details being released on social media. Is that something the quorum court plans to address, whether against them or anybody else?
Yeah, let me be clear there, because I've heard that information also. I told a number of library staff last Friday, called for a meeting at 2:30 with a number of their staff that showed up. And I heard concerns of harassment and threats. I've also heard many third-party reports of harassment and threats. I have contacted law enforcement throughout Saline County, including Benton Bryant and Saline County Sheriff's Office, to report the third-party threats that I've heard. But let me be clear. If you are threatened, you need to call law enforcement and report that threat. If I'm your first call, you made the wrong first call. Hang up and call law enforcement. They need to address threats. I need to tell people it is not okay nor appropriate to threaten or dehumanize other people. It's not. If there are illegal threats that are happening, or one that causes someone to fear for their safety, they need to call law enforcement immediately. Shelley?
Shelley from mysaline.com. I have two questions. First is about the library funding. There was a press release they put out last week, I believe, that said if they did not have oversight over their employees, then perhaps they would lose funding, not from the taxes, but from some other place. Have you discussed it with them, and do you know whether or not they would lose their funding if this ordinance is passed?
You are correct.
Some funding.
Give me just a second. This was the email that was released by the Saline County, somebody within the Saline County library system. The library board status as an administrative board as opposed to an advisory board is what ensures the library receives state aid of approximately $200,000. But the ordinance removes the administrative power, which could likely result in the loss of state aid. I think that's the statement that you're referring to.
That's correct.
I addressed that with library staff. Still don't, I'm not really clear who wrote that, and asked if they had anything that they could show me where that would be true. Nothing has been produced thus far. But in the very wording of the library status as an administrative board, the library still has an administrative board. There are amendments being made to 78-1, which sets forth the administrative board. The administrative board would still be intact. As a matter of fact, as I mentioned earlier, we look to name another trustee to the administrative board. And so I have seen nothing that leads me to believe that this claim is one of fact.
Thank you. My second question is, you stated that it's your goal to get with the library members and go through book by book to see which one
My goal was not to go through book by book, but to leave subject matter experts. And let me be real clear. This kind of goes back to your question, Destin. I don't want to put too much in. I want to be real for a second. If something is explicitly sexual in nature, I have the confidence in people that if you're literate and you can comprehend what you're reading, you know if it's sexually explicit in nature. And that needs to be looked at and reevaluated and reassessed where it is. And I don't think it needs to be made all that difficult. That if it does contain that and it's not age appropriate, then it should be moved. Age appropriate means that it is in the youth children's section of the Saline County Library. It needs to be moved. What we were trying to do is be proactive in that. If somebody's brought something up, if somebody comes in and says, that looks like it might be inappropriate, have enough diligence to go look at it and say, would you like to sit down with us? And yeah, we need to get some leadership in here and assure that something that may have slipped by us has now been assessed. And what are our findings? And if our findings are to move it, it's in the wrong spot, we support them in moving that.
So then my question would be, who specifically decides that, and will they come together every time there's a new book that comes out?
Currently, as I understand it, a form for reconsideration must be filled out. I understood it that you must read the entire piece of work, the entire book, cover to cover, fill out your form, meet with the librarian, the head librarian first, the library director first, then their committee will read it. I was told Friday that they are considering a book currently that has not been read by the person that asked for reconsideration in whole, at least. So I'm not exactly sure if you have to read the whole thing or not.
Okay, one more follow-up.
Go ahead.
If there are people designated, whether the library board, the library employees, other people from the county, if those people cannot get together, if there's a disagreement about, does it stay here, does it get moved over here, does it get a brown paper bag over, et cetera, I don't know what the middle ground is, then does that mean somebody needs to lose their job or get moved off the board, or what happens next when there's a disagreement?
With all due respect, here's one reason why I wanted to do this. We've kind of moved into what ifs, hypotheticals, down the road. What if? As far as I know today, there hasn't been a return of one reconsideration that has been submitted. I am looking for the findings. And I think once we get the findings of one, we might be able to answer your question a lot more accurately on what do we do when. But currently, it's a hypothetical. I don't know. Don't know if that'll ever happen. Any other questions? Hey, thank you for your time. I want to tell you, I remain hopeful. It's going to be okay. We have a great library system. I've identified an issue that has to be addressed. We're good enough to address it. I'm confident it will be addressed. I look forward to people within our county responding to each other while staying in truth, being compassionate and graceful in the way that they do it. If anybody has questions, they are always able to reach out to me via email at matt.brumley@salinecounty.org. Thank you all for your time.